In this video, we're drawing a fantasy town map with a Sharpie. On this channel, I love teaching you how to draw fantasy maps, and a lot of the time in these videos, I'm talking about using some fancy materials and tools, sometimes like professional level tools, or at least they are things that might be harder to find. You have to order them online or go to an art supply store, or maybe they're a little bit more expensive, a little bit more than you are willing to pay, especially if it's the first time you're jumping into making a fantasy town map for yourself. So I thought it would be fun to try making a map with the most regular tools possible, plain old fine point Sharpie and just a regular sheet of plain white paper. So I'm going to take you through my simple map making process using these simple tools, and hopefully this video will encourage you to give map making a try for yourself. I love making maps because it's easy and rewarding. And if all you have is a Sharpie and a piece of paper, I'm confident that you'll be able to make a really cool looking fantasy town or village map. Now, with all of my maps, I usually start with a key. When I say that, it's really just on a separate sheet of paper. I'm trying to figure out how to draw each of the unique elements that are gonna be combined to build this town. And there's a couple of really important reasons for figuring out these icons on a separate sheet of paper. The first is when I start drawing the actual map, I'm going to be jumping in with permanent ink with this Sharpie. There's no erasing that's going to happen, so I want to be sure I know how I'm going to draw each of these elements. But it's also important to understand the limitations of the tools that I'm using. So for example, it's nice to have a brand new Sharpie with a super fine point, but I'm realizing, even as I'm drawing out this key, that this fine point does not last very long at all. The lines are already getting thicker. I think I'm gonna probably ditch the texture, the extra lines that I have on the building roofs. And if I hadn't started on the separate sheet of paper, I definitely would have messed that up on the actual map. I would have had to scrap the whole thing and start over. So it seems like extra work, but it's really not. It's really a way to save time and give yourself a good confidence boost for drawing the actual map. So I figured out houses, towers, the castle, fences and farms, trees, hills. There's going to be some docks and water. You know, I'm just trying to think of all of the places that I'm going to want to draw on the map and then draw them separately first. Now it looks like I'm drawing everything on this key straight away, but really this is also meant to be practice and experimentation. So if the houses don't look the way you want or the trees don't look the way you want, you can just keep drawing them over and over again until you figure out exactly the way you want each of these elements to look. So it can be really, really helpful to spend just a little extra time on this key, this separate sheet of paper, figuring out these icons. I know I'm kind of harping on it, but don't skip this step. This is the really important part, and it's going to make the actual map drawing way more fun and easy. Okay, so let's jump into this actual map. I'm going to grab a new sheet of paper and draw a border. For this one, I'm going to go with just a simple double line, and then I'm jumping straight into the actual drawing. Sharpie to paper, no plan, just drawing. And I guess that's actually not entirely true. I have started to think about my next campaign and how this town might fit into the story of everything. I've only just started thinking about it, so all I'm gonna say is that Flick Silverpin, the sort of narrator of my Patreon adventures, is headed to the southernmost coastline. So yeah, I don't have an actual plan for the layout of this town. I'm just dropping in elements and seeing where this drawing takes me. You know, I think I'll add in a river and a mill. There's gonna be some farms over here and hills with the forest in the background. I'm not drawing any actual roads. I'm just leaving spaces in between the clumps of buildings. And even though I'm just jumping in straight with the Sharpie, if you feel like you need to plan things out a little bit more, especially if you have specific locations you're trying to represent on your map, it might be helpful to start with a pencil first. Or you could roughly plan it out with the Sharpie and then grab a totally new sheet of paper and lay it down over top and trace over your sketch, being a little bit neater and more intentional with where you're placing all of the elements. Okay, this fort that I'm drawing is a really good example of why making that key figuring out the icons on the separate sheet of paper at the beginning is really important. I'm trying to make this fort look a little bit more three-dimensional, and I didn't take the time to figure it out on that separate sheet beforehand, and now it's looking a little wonky. I wasn't exactly sure how to connect the battlement walls to the towers, but that's okay. I'm going with it. I'm gonna power through and keep trying to make this map look as cool as possible. One thing I've noticed about the houses that I'm drawing is that they're sort of at an angle. It's not exactly an isometric angle, but I have sort of tilted them and some of the fences, and it's creating a nice depth effect. And there is a sort of nice loose style to it, but at the same time, with all these cattywampus buildings, the map doesn't look super cohesive to me. I'm thinking maybe I should have drawn them more flat, like the castle and the trees. And while it would have sort of flattened the perspective of the map, not that there's really perspective going on here, but I think it just would have made the whole thing look a little bit neater and more uniform. But the cool thing about drawing straight in Sharpie is it's sort of liberating. Drawing straight in ink makes it so you have to live with your mistakes. There's no erasing or changing things. I'm having to commit right away to my ideas, and this whole map drawing process, Sharpie to paper process, is kind of setting me free from my natural perfectionism. And as I go, I'm learning a lot about Sharpies. The first and most obvious thing is they bleed. When you get to a corner or you slow down your drawing, the line gets thicker as the ink bleeds into the paper. Another interesting thing is that the line quality of a Sharpie is actually way more varied than I thought. If you keep the pen straight up and down and press down lightly, you'll get a thinner line. And if you press down harder and sort of angle the pen more, you'll get a thicker line. And of course, the most important thing I'm noticing is that the actual felt pen tip, the fine point, is wearing down very, very quickly. And that just means the line is getting thicker and it's a little bit harder to get some of those details in as you go along. I guess I could totally just grab another Sharpie, but I'm trying to draw this entire map with just one single pen. Now, if you're here watching this video and you're interested in learning how to draw fantasy maps, I have a guidebook. It's called Flick Silverpen's Guide to Making Maps. The physical book is available in my online shop, and if you want the digital version, you can just sign up for my Patreon and get that guide plus a bunch of others, some tabletop role-playing game adventures, all kinds of fun stuff over on my Patreon. Or you can also just check out all of the other videos I've made on the channel. I feel like I talk nonstop about why making maps is so awesome and fun, and I just hope that seeing little projects like this Sharpie Town map encourage you to give drawing a shot, give making maps a try. Building little worlds like this is so much fun, and you'll be surprised at how easy and rewarding it is. Okay, so I'm adding a little town crest down here in the corner. I'm gonna call this place Far Harbor for now. I'm adding a fantastical bird creature that's flying over water. That's the crest, because I think it'll actually be easier to get here on the back of some giant bird than it is to travel through the swamps and forests or by boat. So drawing the actual map took me just over 18 minutes, and drawing with Sharpie is a lot of fun. It's got me wondering what other tools I should use. What other fun ways are there to make interesting looking maps? Definitely let me know if you have any suggestions down in the comments. I've got a lot of fun ideas for the future, so definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So it's not perfect, but I'm really happy with how this Sharpie map turned out. I would absolutely throw this down on the table at my D&D game, give the players some reference of all of the key locations in Far Harbor. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!